Hello and welcome to another Döhle Yachts coffee break. My name is Joe Assale and I'm the Technical Director, and today I'm joined by my colleague Ben Geary, our Fleet Statutory Manager. Today we're going to talk to you about pilot ladders and embarkation ladders and highlight the difference in their construction and operational use on board. Ben, talk to me about firstly a pilot ladder. What is it and why do we need it?
Yep, so if you fire up the slide, as you can see here, we have a lovely pilot vessel coming alongside a ship with the pilot ladder laid out ready to either allow the pilot to transfer on board or to transfer the pilot off the vessel. The key thing here, and when you're looking at it, is that spreader bar. So the big bar in the middle is called a spreader bar, obviously. That is there to stop the ladder twisting. Because what you've got to look at, this is the safe transfer of a pilot. And obviously the rules we're looking at are an international standard. So they stem down from the IMO, but actually the build standard that you're looking at for these ladders is the ISO standard 799-1 2019. The key here, again, is the spreader bar. So you're looking at the safety, and that's the main point that we're looking at for pilot ladders.
And what about the actual construction of them? Because it looks quite rudimentary from what we can see on the screen there.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'll see that in both, whether it's the pilot ladder or the embarkation ladder. Should we say they're more traditional looking? So the rules are very specific. So within the ISO standard or within the LSA code, they do ask that you look at hardwood materials, that you're looking at manila ropes. So they're quite traditional in that sense because the rule stems back quite a long way.
Okay. Now, you mentioned about a pilot getting on and off the boat. But that's different to an embarkation ladder. So maybe you can tell us what an embarkation ladder is for.
Yeah, so if you fire up the next slide. So basically, we talked about pilot ladder is to get a pilot on board and off the vessel. The embarkation ladder is to allow people to embark into LSA equipment. So that's the key function of that, is to allow people to safely transfer from the vessel into the LSA equipment.
So nothing to do with guests getting on board the vessel?
No, not at all. So this is what you see here. I mean, the embarkation ladder there, the difference you're seeing that between that and the pilot ladder is that we have no spreader bar. But again, you're looking, it's very traditional in the way it's built with the wood and the manila rope.
And would this also be a SOLAS approved piece of equipment? Where are the standards for this?
Yeah, so again, you're looking in the LSA code for this under chapter 6. And this is basically, again, the rules are very clear. You'll get an MED certificate, type approval certificates for these, but the requirements for them are very simply laid out.
Okay. Now, it doesn't look very yacht friendly, the traditional chunky wood. I know that a lot of people on board operationally don't like to even drill with these, lay them down over the side of the vessel in case they damage the paintwork. But there are quite a lot of novel materials or lightweight materials that are coming onto the market. So are those an option for yachts?
Yeah, I mean, when you look at, we keep talking about it, they're very traditional looking. Now, obviously, there are different ladders out there. You've seen the carbon side, there are different kinds, which again are approved and they follow a rule set, but they may not be exactly as the rules are required within either the ISO 799 or within the LSA code.
I think that's an important point to note, that when we get a type approval certificate, it may be misleading you to believe that a product is approved for a use when actually it is an equivalent in certain areas, such as material, and therefore it's actually been named something subtly different, and it is misleading. So for example, an embarkation ladder here, which is required to be made out of certain materials, if we're not able to meet those requirements, it may be that it's been approved by a classification society as a means of embarkation.
Yeah.
Which is different. Now, you're required to have an embarkation ladder on board and a pilot ladder.
Both.
However, if you have an alternative set of materials being used, it may be that it is not meeting the strict letter of the rules. As a result of this, it's really key that if that's something that gets picked up on, that you engage with your flag state.
And I think that is key, and it's something, again, if you're in doubt and you get given these type approval certificates from the supplier, maybe from the shipyard, is talk to the flag. Because it may be that after they've reviewed that for an embarkation ladder, let's say, that they may give you an equivalence, but don't just assume it's going to happen because you've seen it on another vessel or you've seen it somewhere else. These things are taken as a case-by-case example.
Yeah, and the thing about having a flag state specific exemption or permission to use a certain piece of equipment is how that would be treated elsewhere within other jurisdictions when you're operating worldwide. It's all very well having an equivalence or an exemption to a regulation that your flag said, yeah, we're happy with that, that's fine. But when you're sailing in someone else's waters, they have the ability to say, well, actually, we're not happy with that exemption or that equivalent that's been given, and we believe you should be following the letter of the regulation exactly. Now, when it comes to an embarkation ladder, this is less problematic because the time you're going to use an embarkation ladder is, as Ben described, when you're getting into your life-saving appliances. However, as these vessels start to go further and further afield and start to enter into ports that are not yacht-friendly, when a pilot approaches a vessel and he is presented with an arrangement on the side of the yacht, if that arrangement doesn't look like all of the international standards and all the literature that he's used to seeing and in his experience getting on board, and he suddenly sees novel materials, he might just simply say, I'm not getting on board that vessel. Now, if you've got guests on board, you're chartering, you're booked in somewhere, that could be hugely disruptive to the schedule. So any equivalence, whether it's to do with a ladder, whether it's to do with the arrangement of the vessel, always has to be considered in how that equivalence or exemption will actually be treated elsewhere in the world when you're operational, and just worth considering.
I think that's really key, especially for pilot ladders. You know, we're often used to the yachting hubs where pilots are very used to yachts coming in and out, and they're used to, let's say, the alternatives to the standard and the traditional pilot ladders you see. But what we're seeing is obviously as the yachts explore further afield and they go to more, let's say, more shipping orientated ports, those pilots are not as aware of those materials. And again, it's down to that perception, that first image that pilot has as he approaches your vessel. If they don't feel comfortable, then they have every right not to board your vessel.
Absolutely, worth considering that risk. Well, Ben, thank you very much for explaining the difference between the embarkation ladder and the pilot ladder. If anyone has any further questions on this or anything else, then our contact details will be at the end. Thank you very much.
Thank you.